Well, hi there, it's Polly here with Mr. Snoots. So, look, we've done some takedowns of people who write in hate mail and indeed death threats to this channel before. I thought we might just actually take a look at some properly today. In a more serious note, an actual, what would you call this? A reaction video. Is that true? Okay, that's true. Oh my god, we're doing a reaction video. Alright, let's look at contestant number 1. I am not a Nazi or a fascist, but I disagree with you and your belief system. I find your belief system to be destructive to society. Alright, that is actually a statement essentially in two parts. The first, I am not a fascist or a Nazi. Let's put that aside for a moment and let's find what the second part can actually tell us about this. Alright, my belief system. Well, this person knows nothing about my religion or what other beliefs that I might have. You know, the really important stuff. Am I all for 5th edition D&D or am I purely OSR? No, he's talking about me being transgender. Well, first let me just say that being transgender is not a belief. I am a transgender woman. That is what I am. And indeed, this person knows that I am a transgender woman because they are criticizing me for being that. So we both agree that I am a transgender woman. We don't just both believe it, we know it. It is a fact. Hello, I'm Paulie Kidd. I am a transgender woman. Tall woman, short woman, fair woman, brunette woman, cis woman, trans woman. Whatever. But this person's talking about me being transgender. So, that being transgender is destructive to society in this man's view. What type of society would find the existence of a transgender person to be destructive to it? Well, not a democratic society. A society in which people are free to express themselves as they wish, where free speech is upheld, where personal expression is a right enjoyed by all. That sort of society has no bones to pick with us. So only an authoritarian society does. Authoritarian societies operate in a strict hierarchy. There are those who are born to rule, and there are those who are born to be ruled. You are placed in one class or another due to birth. Patriarchy works exactly the same way. It is an authoritarian structure which says men are born superior to women and they do certain things, and women, who are inferior, are born to do certain things. And neither side may ever in any way cross over. You are born with a destiny somehow attached to your genitals, which will define everything in your life. How you dress, how you speak, how you eat, how you act, how you gesture, everything. Genitalia somehow determines this. The reason these societies find this to be a threat, well, that belief is called biological determinism, that you are born in a certain way and can never change it. That woman is born inferior to a man, or that people are born into a role and may not change it. The existence of trans people essentially is a swift kick to the nads for that belief, because it shows that biological determinism is a farce. People can choose to take on whatever gender roles that they wish. It isn't somehow born, it isn't somehow decreed from on high. People can break the hierarchy. It's not preordained. So, a transgender person's existence is a threat to these societies. This other thing you'll find is, it threatens the structure of the traditional family. Now, that traditional family they talk about is not actually a traditional family. That is simply someone's vision of a traditional family, and it's only one that's existed in a very small place over a very small time. Traditionally, families have been a father with a great many wives and dozens of kids, or polygamous societies with and polyamorous societies with people with many different partners. It's been entire villages raising kids together. There's been so many different models, all of which have actually worked quite successfully. But this person is talking very much about the imaginary past that is always evoked in any fascist group. Fascism always revolves around a call to the good old days, an imaginary time when things were better. In the case of white American fascists, that time that is better is when white men ran everything, women shut the hell up, didn't vote and just stayed home making sandwiches and breeding kids, and where you could just hang black folk that got too uppity. The good old days. Make America great again. So you are saying that my belief that people should be able to express themselves however they will, and that our destinies can be shaped and chosen, and you are not born eternally into simple inferiority to others, that there is no God-given hierarchy. You say that that belief is destructive. I, sir, say that there is only one societal model which would find that destructive. That is a fascist model, a Nazi model. On that basis, you have actually counted your own first statement. You, sir, are a fascist. You're a smegging Nazi. Piss off. You get such stupid, confusing ones. You know, like you get these ones that just put a job. Why is he dressed like his ex-wife, though? You never met my ex-wife. She died horrifically of cancer. Thank you for asking. Actually, I don't dress like my ex-wife. My entire look, if you have a look, tends to be bell sleeves. It tends to be silks. I dress magnificently. The style, if you're really interested, you would probably describe most of what I wear as boho, although I will occasionally go goth and very medieval goth. No, I do not dress like my ex-wife. If anything, she dressed... she was a jeans and t-shirt person. Thanks for asking, though. I love this one. Dude, you will never be a woman. Everything about you screams a man. Well, no, actually, and that's actually part of the process of being a transgender person. Through most of our earlier lives, we were ostracised and bullied for what were perceived as being characteristics outside of our gender. In my case, assigned male at birth, I was very much ostracised for talking with my hands, for my gentler voice, for my gentler way, for my different way of expressing myself, for my rather gentle way of looking after people. These were seen as very feminine traits, and that's what I was absolutely ostracised for. So, despite anything physical, no, your male society actually rejected me and said that I was female. And yet, because it suits your political purpose, you'll now attempt to reject me and claim me to maleness. And this is always interesting, that claim to maleness. We're taking you back. You're not a woman. Somehow we're taking you back where you belong. Well, I never belonged, and you made that very, very clear. But also, you don't have the power to tell me where I belong. That was the freedom I won for myself. I'm not a man, I'm a transgender woman. And I don't know how to break this to you, but I've got the tits to prove it. Why don't you fuck yourself sideways? How's about that? I like this one. Excuse me, this is actually being written without real punctuation, as is the right wings want. I'll just turn this way so I can read it for you. In the early 90s, I played a sex-trafficked hermaphrodite in a cyberpunk When Gravity Fails campaign, but the left is completely incompetent when fighting culture wars. They turned statues that literally no one cared about into symbols of neo-racist, neo-colonialist right. They took important initiatives like DII, critical race theory, and non-Western historiography, and turned them into symbols of the left's self-hate for Western civilization, and trans women in sports isn't helping. Trans women can be women in any way they want, but they can't deny the genetic biological differences and advantages that they hold over. Genetic testing in women's sports began in 1968 because some countries specifically recruiting athletes with crossover genetics argue for trans people to be treated equitably, not a fancy world where they deny actual measurable differences. Oh my God, there's a lot going on in there. All right. So this sad person, I don't care what the hell you played in the 90s. In the 70s, I actually played female characters in the very first D&D campaigns ever. In fact, my very first Dungeons and Dragons character was a female called Lucretia, who was and is still hilarious. She is still in play. Many of us, in fact, tried out other genders for size through role-playing games, which is why they are so important to transgender people. Turning statues into symbols, etc. Statues, you are going to be talking about Confederate statues. They should come down. Those statues do not represent history. Those statues represent an attempt by right-wing Southern groups long after the American Civil War to essentially proclaim areas to be white only. They are part of the whole false narrative of the lost cause of the South, the noble Southerners who merely fought for freedom, and somehow the evil Yankees done turn against them. And shut up. Every single one of those Southern generals was fighting to enslave their fellow man, and didn't care how many people they murdered to do it. No, you don't put up statues of Confederate generals for the same way you don't find any statues of Hitler in Germany. Himmler has no tomb, and there's reasons for that. And that's why those statues are taken down. As for this Western culture thing, I always find that interesting. It's a thing that the West. Right-wingers bang on about that, mostly because they know nothing about culture at all. None of them have listened to an opera. They can't name a painting. None of them have heard Mozart. They're not actually talking about Western culture at all. They're talking about white supremacy, because they don't know what Western culture is. There's a vague hand wave where they sort of say, oh, that includes, like, Greece and Rome. Says, I've got bad news for you. Ancient Greeks didn't look like you, shuckling people from, amphibian Arkansas. You wouldn't call them white. And there's really no contiguity with whatever culture you think you have today with people in ancient Athens. In fact, in ancient Athens, I'm sure you've heard the name, I think you'd find that they were democratic AF. These guys had a absolutely blossoming democracy. They, in fact, invented the sodding word, demos, of the community. That's where that comes from. They were very big on homosexual relationships between men and between women. They didn't have anything there that really meshes with anything a current white supremacist would find palatable. Absolutely nothing. Plus they're really into, mathematics, trying to discover medicine, how the world works. This love of intellectualism was actually the core of much of their culture. Anti-intellectualism is the core of right-wing culture. It's a complete anathema. Rome, they think, is also part of their heritage. Yeah, I don't think you find there many white blonde Romans, my dear son. They didn't look like that either. And again, there's no contiguity with that civilization and yours either, apart from a few ruins and a few bits and pieces. You're talking about Goths. You're talking about Germans. Germans were a very specific group of people who lived in a very specific band of the world and were pretty specifically not liked. But if you're talking mighty Western civilization, the way you think it is, white dudes that you think you are descended from, yeah. What, you're talking Scandinavians? You're talking Goths who swept forward into Europe? Yeah, they're all steppe peoples. They're from way out east. They've got no continuity between their culture whatsoever and Roman Greece. They come from over there, bud. They've borrowed some bits as they've come in, but it's not really continuous apart from borrowing the clothes of a few traditions, proclaiming oneself to be Holy Roman Emperor. Charlemagne, Emperor, Imperator. That's about it. Western civilization. Western civilization. Study some history, my darlings. Western civilization is things like the Reformation. Western civilization is things like Enlightenment, where we decided certain things, where we decided that there is no divine right of kings. Once upon a time there was a wonderful man, John Lilburne, who sat down and began to have a think in the ruins left by the English Civil War about some very simple things, that the lowest person in the kingdom has as much a right to live as the highest born and the wealthiest. That a woman has as deep and rich a life to live as a man. That every person should have a voice in their government. That skin colour should not dictate a man's worth. The American Revolution was born in a direct line from those thoughts. It goes through things like the Glorious Revolution, the Petition of Right, and goes through the evolution of the 18th century, where people begin to think about things like human rights, that some people are not born superior to others, that everybody on earth has certain inalienable rights to life, to the pursuit of happiness. These become very formative ideas, and those indeed do blossom in Western culture at the time. Are you wanting to say that you are the direct inheritor of those values? Then embrace them. Because those Enlightenment values, despite all its faults, they go on to become the values of people like Abraham Lincoln and so on in your American Civil War period. That is your true heritage. People that honestly believed that no person is born entirely to lead others, and that no person is born to be lower, to be led, to be lesser than, that no one can own another person, that we all have rights, human rights. That is a legacy of Western civilization which you reject. You reject it absolutely. You are traitors to the very core legacy of what you would see as Western civilization. Other civilizations, of course, have embraced so many variations on this. It is not unique. You will find so many different nations out there that have had their own discoveries, their own versions of that essential core discovery that men and women were not born to be greater or lesser than one another, and that each of us should be judged for our character and not for the contents of our wallet. Yeah, you're traitors to the very culture that you claim to represent, because you reject the only values that made Western civilization great. Despite its hypocrisy, despite its colonialism, there was still somewhere that belief that we are trying to get better and that we are trying to make a more even, more shared world. You want to celebrate Western civilization? You celebrate those values. And the trans sports thing, of course. I don't know how to break it to you, Bob, but the science is in. Transgender women have no advantages over assigned female at birth people whatsoever. We do not retain any upper body strength from being males, but, and here's the heartbreaker, we do not magically gain the extra lower body strength that women have. Also, because we do tend to have heavier frames, we do not have the very high power to weight ratio that women have. We cannot do the athletics they do, we cannot do the gymnastics that they do, and they very seriously tend to outspeed us in anything like racing. We are, in fact, at a disadvantage. If you see a transgender woman doing okay in sports, that's because she trained her little heart out. No one's wrecking women's sports. These sports aren't being dominated by trans women. We're almost not there. What is it? 500,000 college athletes in the USA. 10 of them were transgender. 10 of them. Can you name them? If these sports are so important to you, who are the winners? They weren't trans people. That's your first clue. Trans people are coming in third, they're coming in fifth, they're coming in ninth. They ain't winning this stuff. You don't care about women's sports. You never have. What you care about is controlling women. That's what you care about. You couldn't tell me who your local women's sports are. You can't tell me great women's sports names. Who won the women's 100-metre sprint in the last Olympics? What's the name of your local women's soccer team? You don't care. You just want to use a cudgel to beat the transgender community around the head with. Well, the science says that we don't have an advantage. That science that you keep going on about, science trumps your feelings. Your feeling is that we somehow have an advantage. The science says we don't. Petard, you hoist. So sod off. Oh, I love this little hateful one. Paul. Let's be honest, it's Paul. Very poor attempt at RuPaul. All right, so for those of you who are basically too dim to know the difference, people who perform drag are not necessarily trans, and trans people are not drag artists. There are very, very, very distinct lines between these. A drag performer is a very specific type of performer. With that goes an almost ritual type of makeup. In many ways, they create a look which is a parody of a woman, a emphasis upon certain things. They are outre. They have brilliant colours, they have amazing hair, they have fantastic coiffure, they have amazing poise. They are an entertainer that has an act and they dress in a costume for that act. And those costumes are magnificent. They take a long time to get into and they are meticulous. There are some amazing drag looks out there. Amazing stuff. There are also drag kings, which are assigned female at birth people who dress male for a similar entertainment experience, and they look magnificent as well. Transgender people are people who live their lives as a gender that is not the one that they were assigned at birth. Either they were born and assigned male, but they've decided that they wish to live as a woman in the female gender, or the other way around. They were born assigned female and wish to live as a man. That is a transgender person. It is not put on or off. It is not a costume. It is 24/7 in every aspect of our lives. I'm very proud to say that I'm a transgender woman. When I dress as a transgender woman. When I go to sleep, it is a transgender woman. When I brush my teeth, it is a transgender woman. It's not an act, it's what I am. 24/7, that's how we live, because that's what we are. We are now people of our chosen gender. It's a very simple concept. Cross-dressing, by the way, is completely different. Cross-dressing is done and it's finite. Someone cross-dresses for a reason. could be comedic, could be romantic, could be sexual, could be just for laughs, could be virtually any reason. There are people who do it habitually, there are people who do it just for a gag every now and then, there are people who do it on stage. But at the end of the day, the gear comes off. They do not live in that gender. So they are different from being a transgender person and from being a drag artist. Some people who are eventually going to end up as trans may begin as a cross-dresser, nervously trying out that different gender to see how it feels. Is this you? And in which case it's a first step and it's important. So I and the trans community treat cross-dressers kindly with a great deal of respect, because many of them are what we call eggs. They are people who may become trans if they find that this is what they want, that this is what truly makes them happy, this is what liberates them. On the other hand, they may not. And if they don't, then that is also fine. If they continue cross-dressing for other purposes, that is their life. It is not for me to criticise the journey of identity that they are on. It's their journey, and I will fight to defend their right to have that journey. And that's what makes me a better person than someone that just turns up and puts crap like this on someone else's YouTube channel. This is just an old white dude in drag. Actually, that's sort of interesting. Dude. So, dude originally actually meant someone who dresses and acts immaculately, a sophisticated person of the town. Well, let me see. Silver tie necklace. That's a silk skirt. This is just my usual casuals. This is from Ida Purr. This was handmade for me. There's only one like it in the entire world. Bell sleeves, also of course bespoke. I tend only to wear bespoke clothes. So yes, in its actual core sense, yes, I'm a dude. I dress magnificently. However, on later connotations, dude became things like a city person who pretends to country skills and so on. It may disturb you, my child, to know that, unlike you, I was actually raised in the country, in the Australian outback. The first job I was ever paid for was as a gillaroo, which you, in America, would call a cowgirl. A female cowboy. Yes, I rode the range, I lassoed steers. What I was actually doing was I was hired to take blood samples from them. So I was riding the range on a horse for days and days on an end, camping out, and as I found different populations of cattle in different areas that were feeding on different plants, my job was to rope the motherfuckers, take a blood sample, which in cows gets to be in the neck. This is all somehow without getting killed. Then put these into eskies, and after a few days, come home. So, yeah, you're wrong in that one. Not a dude. Oh, and also in the insulting sense where you're obviously trying to say that I'm a male. No, I'm not. I truly am not. I'm a transgender woman. I truly am. And as I told in one of the earlier ones, the male society rejected me. They kicked me out. They didn't want me around because they said I was too much of a woman for them. Now you want me back. Explain that one to me. Now you want me back. Interesting. What's so important? Or the other thing that I always find is, why are you so keen for me to be male? Are you gay? Are you crushing on me? Well, it's very flattering, but I'm otherwise occupied. Old? Yeah, time of filming, I'm 61. I don't look it. I'm a dancer. I exercise ferociously. I have beaten cancer. Top level sword fighter, top level bayonet fighter, top level knife fighter. I dance burlesque on stage. I strip down to pasties and stockings and garters, son. I'm old, but you will never never look as good as I do when you get to my age. Because you spent a life admired in hate, whereas I've spent a life admired in joy. I will laugh down at your grave because you're not going to last the way I have. It's not going to happen. Look, this one. This is a parody channel? If so, congrats, it's hilarious, lol. No, actually, this is not a parody channel. I'm probably one of the most experienced game designers on the planet. I'm 61 years old. I began designing my first game when I was 19. This game was published when I was 21. So since that time, I have been a full-time games designer and science fiction and fantasy author, but particularly games design. For 40 years without pause, I have designed games. Good ones. I have 5 world #1 computer titles to my credit. I have 49 novels out. I have countless role-playing games. I currently have miniatures games coming out from the top history book publishers in the UK, entire ranges of miniatures made for these games. So I would class myself as indeed a top professional of the games industry. This channel, at its core, is a games channel where I review games, very specifically role-playing games, which I love, miniatures games, tabletop war games. Those are its core, and I review them from the point of view of not only someone that loves and enjoys to play these games, but from a designer who can speak my thoughts from a designer's point of view as to whether these games are done well or done badly, what these games were trying to achieve, and how they achieved it. It is a channel by an expert who loves a genre of creative work, speaking to people who also love those genres of creative work. That is what this channel is. If you stare at this and none of it makes any sense to you, then you are on the wrong channel. It's that simple. You came to a games channel and you were looking for, I don't know, the white supremacist channel. You can find plenty of those. So why don't you go and look at those ones? Seriously. Oh, I love this one, of course. It's fine that you have found your joy, but do not try to impose that joy on the private spaces of women and girls. All right, in transgender terms, this is the big lie. There are no attacks by transgender women on cis women and girls. That is a shibboleth, a invention. It is invented entirely from whole cloth by the right wing. Transgender women do not attack cis women in public bathrooms. Cis men do. No one puts on a $300 dress, a $500 wig, puts on makeup, and then uses that to sneak into a toilet where they can pounce, haha, and rape someone. They just walk in. Pretty typical one was recent, where some poor woman, who was just a cis woman who was tall, went into a bathroom. She was a Walmart employee, and a guy burst in there because he was going to beat her up because he decided that she was trans and he was going to beat up a trans woman for being in the women's bathroom. Sidebar, see if you can guess the lifespan of someone that tried that on me. But do you notice anything about that tale? A cis man barged into that woman's space because he felt privileged to do so. And that's what they want to do. No one puts on an act to rape someone. They just rape them. If a cis man is hanging around toilets to rape someone, he's not doing it in a dress. He's just hanging around there till he thinks no one's going to find him other than his victim, and then he just goes in and does it. That's the scenario. You can search high and low on this planet. and you will not find actual bona fide tales of cis women being somehow pounced upon and raped in toilets by transgender women. Every single cis woman that you know has a tale of sexual assault involving a cis man. Every woman you have ever met in your life has that tale. When you create deliberate falsehoods like this, it does many things. The first thing it does, of course, is it creates a false narrative that an outgroup is somehow preying upon the white women. This is always a racist trope. The white women must be protected. The breeders must be protected from the terrible parasites who are pretending to be them. It's all about controlling women. It's always about controlling women. But what it does is it hijacks the actual conversation, which is the violence of cis men. It's not handled, it's not spoken about. That man who broke into that toilet to try and attack someone on the basis they were trans, not a word said. He's not going to be arrested for being in a women's space. He's not going to be in any way even censured for it. He felt he had a right to barge into women's spaces whenever he wanted. He felt he had the right to inflict violence on anyone that he wanted. And yet, what's being talked about? Well, at least that woman wasn't really trans. Oh, he would have been all right to beat her up if she'd been trans. Really? Yeah, it hijacks the actual conversation. There's another aspect to that, of course. If you say that transgender people must go into the bathroom of their assigned sex at birth, have you seen transgender men? Holy cow! Most of them are magnificent. They love beards. Many of them love working out, but they look male. They truly look male. These people are going to be going into women's bathrooms. Now you've got an environment where big, tall, muscly guys with beards can walk in and out of women's toilets at will, because there's no way to know which ones are a trans man and which one isn't. You have just made things worse. And here's the other side to this. There is a population that actually is in more danger of rape than any other population of people on Earth. Guess who? Transgender women. We are the ones who are the most raped population of people in the world. We deserve to be in those women's spaces without men barging in. It's a safe space for women, and we are women. When you do something like set up a women's only gym that has women's self-defense classes, and you say trans women aren't welcome to come to those women's self-defense classes, this is something that's being done at the moment. Who, more than anyone else, needs those classes? We do. When you shut trans women out of rape crisis centres, who's most likely to be raped? We are. Who's most likely to need these facilities per capita? We are. But you've given us nowhere to go. Are we supposed to go into a homeless shelter with the men who will rape us? It hijacks the actual problem. It stops you from confronting what actually needs to be confronted. That there is a problem with the entitlement and the violence of cis men. It's all about controlling women. Knock it off. Let me pee. Sidebar? Yeah, I'm bitter about this one. I have fought off at least one rape and murder attempt. I'm probably the only person that you will ever meet who's actually been in a knife fight. I have been directly assaulted 1, 2, 3 times and have stopped several others in their tracks. And the reason that I face these assaults, because I'm a transgender woman. It's dangerous for us out there to flip that narrative and say that we are the predators. That is an act of evil. That is a utterly evil thing to do. You have deliberately spread a falsehood in order to cause damage to a community that is desperately in need of help and protection. Screw you. Private spaces of women and girls. I've been a dancer for a long time, and I am there sharing the change rooms with my fellow female dancers. We're flitting back and forth, bras on and off, people pulling their knickers on, people helping each other get their costumes on, spraying glitter on each other, helping each other get their damn eyeliner straight. I'll tie your shoes while she gets your headpiece ready. It's like it's a place of business. No one's ever questioned me why I'm there. Why am I there? Because I'm a woman. Why am I there? To use the change room. That's why I'm there. Absurd. Ridiculous. Again, this whole thing about protecting women's spaces. You don't want to protect women. None of you do. If you wanted to protect women, you wouldn't vote rapists into office. It's that simple. It's that simple. That would be the end of it. Grab them by the pussy would be the end of it. I cheated on my wife 3 times would be the end of it. I've had 6 children with 4 different women would be the end of it. But it isn't. You don't care about women. You care about controlling women. That's very different. That's fascism. Keep them in their place. With all of this, there are some moments that do shine through. I have some people who do put some very, very beautiful comments up here. So let's just leave this with one from one beautiful viewer. She's just put on one of my statements, "The beauty shines through. Truth from a beautiful soul, thank you, Paulie." It's the comments like that that make me keep the channel going. That's why I keep doing it. In face of all the death threats, in the face of all this rubbish, there are people who've written in just to say thanks. And there are people who've written in to say that seeing me being visible gives them courage to come out themselves, or gives them courage to live their lives. And on that basis, I will keep going. Anyway, Mr. Snoots and I will keep on fighting the good fight. I found some really cool games. I've just had a couple of good ones arrive. I'm very much looking forward to reviewing them for everybody. So I will keep going, and I will hopefully see you guys around a games table sometime, somewhere, somewhen. Look after yourselves. Much love.